When a woman is too confident and independent, hmm, what to do? What to do? Well, Frances Farmer was born in Seattle in 1913. She did not have an easy childhood. When she was only about 4 years old, her parents separated and eventually divorced. Mom took the kids to California, and just like today, the kids were passed back and forth between their parents. Frances learned she could rely on no one but herself. She was never convinced to believe anything else. Okay, so let's hop ahead to 1931 when she was a senior at West Seattle High School. There was a writing contest with Scholastic magazine. The prize was $100. That's about $2,100 today. She won. The title of her piece? It wasn't necessarily atheism, but she couldn't figure out why Sky Daddy was so obsessed with chaos. After high school, she headed to the University of Washington to study journalism. Whoa, she loved writing and wanted to be a writer? So, to pay her tuition, she took various jobs from singing waitress to soap factory employee. Hey, you gotta diversify. And like many other people, college taught her that her major was not her passion. See, because during sophomore year, she was in a drama department production, and her fate was sealed. She never did fall out of love with the stage. Oh, but her senior year, she scandalized everybody. There was another writing contest that she won. The prize that time was a free trip to the Soviet Union, where she would visit the Moscow Art Theater. Everyone, especially her mother, demanded that she turn down the prize. Frances was like, no. Yeah, so her mom got pissed. Of course, when she got home, Frances was labeled. She wasn't, though. She just enjoyed the fucking theater. She graduated the same year with a bachelor's in drama. On to New York City, where she was hoping for a theater career. But instead, a talent scout found her. He set up a screen test, and she nailed it. On her 22nd birthday, she signed a 7-year contract with Paramount Pictures. Of course, that meant she needed to fill the role of starlet. That started with dental surgery to fix a gap in her teeth, and hours on the Paramount lot training. Oh, and Paramount wanted her to change her name so she'd sound more alluring. Oh, well, she didn't want to, so she didn't. I know, so rude of her. Anyway, she landed her first movie role in November of 1935. The film was called Too Many Parents, and it was a hit. One of her favorite roles, though, came in 1936 when she starred opposite Bing Crosby. It was a film called Rhythm on the Range, and she admitted he'd been her celebrity crush. Can you imagine getting that close to your celebrity crush? Okay, yeah, maybe you can. I can't. Anyway, so now she was a rising star, and Paramount wanted her to act like it. Except she didn't care about that shit. And that, kids, is where her problems began. She resisted every attempt to make her private life public. She was quiet and rarely gave interviews. So, of course, she was labeled cold and aloof. She didn't like wearing makeup off set. She wore comfortable clothing and drove around in a rundown old jalopy, instead of flashing her wealth. She even argued with directors. One of those guys, William Wyler. Yeah, so he said the nicest thing to say about Frances Farmer is that she is unbearable. You should interpret that as she spoke her mind and didn't bow down to men. Well, poor old Paramount, they needed to turn a profit, so they found an angle. They started publicizing her as the star who would not go to Hollywood, and remarked on her eccentric fashion taste. Yes, because heaven forbid she just do what she wants. Despite that, or maybe because of those things, she was in high demand and fans were filled with desire. The thing is, she wanted to be taken seriously as an actor, not a vixen. Remember, I said she never fell out of love with the stage? Yeah, so in mid 1937, she headed to the East Coast, against Paramount's wishes. She played the lead in a show called Golden Boy for 248 performances. Some criticized her as being miscast, but her celebrity overshadowed that criticism, and the show went on a national tour, garnering rave reviews. She ended up getting into a relationship with a playwright, a very married playwright. His name was Clifford Odets. Nope, don't care if I said it right. So yeah, he fucked her, then fucked her over, as you would expect. She reasonably felt used because he replaced her in the play once he was done fucking her. That wasn't the only time she was treated as a thing instead of a person. Each betrayal chipped away at her mind. And wouldn't you know it, being treated that way did not encourage her to do as she was told. Soon she was labeled unruly, and her formerly rising star began to fall. She started binge drinking, was arrested for DUI several times, including in 1942 when she was pulled over in Santa Monica for using her high beams. It was a wartime blackout zone. You know, schmazzies in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor. The officers suspected she was under the influence. She couldn't produce her driver's license. She was, quote, verbally abusive and ultimately ordered to pay a fine of $500. That's about 10 grand today, which she paid half of. She didn't give a shit about the other half. So, bench warrant. Around that same time, a studio hairdresser filed assault charges, claiming Frances had broken her jaw on set. So, cops showed up at the Knickerbocker Hotel where Frances had been living. She pretended she wasn't home. They went in anyway. At her hearing, she made the history that most people can't get enough of. She loudly claimed that police had violated her rights. She demanded an attorney. Now, why the fuck would she go and do that? Then she threw an inkwell at the judge. Admittedly, that one was pretty bad. He sentenced her to 180 days in jail. So she knocked down one cop and bruised another. She ran for a phone booth to try to call for an attorney. Again, why the fuck would she do that? The cop stopped her and physically carried her away. As they did, she shouted, "Have you ever had a broken heart?" Instead of jail, though, she ended up in a psych ward. Their diagnosis? Manic depressive psychosis. In modern terms, kids, she was bipolar, like me. She was involuntarily committed to what you've probably heard called an insane asylum. Credit to her mom, who fought for 6 months to get her out, then claimed guardianship over Frances. But she and mom did not get along. So after one particularly bad argument, in 1945, mom had her recommitted, again involuntarily. Frances was there that time for 5 years. Her time there was highly sensationalized. Hey, she was finally living publicly, right? In her posthumously published autobiography, she detailed gruesome treatments: electroshock therapy, being raped, half drowned, chained, and receiving 90 days of insulin treatment. According to healthfully.com, taking insulin when you don't need it is dangerous at best and fatal at worst. So she ran away. Fucking duh. And eventually won independence from her mom. But she lived in constant fear of being recommitted. Many people have claimed she was lying. You know, unruly and psychotic, you don't have to believe her. She was arrested several more times, including for vagrancy. The woman once compared to Greta Garbo was finding quieter work, like in a photography studio, working as a bookkeeper, and sorting laundry at the very hotel where she'd been arrested. She never did reach out to her family again. Gee, I wonder why. Remember I said she loved the stage? Well, she made something of a comeback in 1957. For 6 years, she was the host of a well-received and well-loved TV show, Frances Farmer Presents. During the show's run, she was named Businesswoman of the Year. In the 60s, she was the actress in residence at Purdue University. But her bipolar disorder went untreated. Mental health wasn't considered worth treating, kids. And her behavior became erratic. She was fired, rehired, refired. According to a 1970 article in the New York Times, Frances found Sky Daddy, gave up drinking, and settled in Indianapolis, where she lived out her life before passing away in 1970 at the age of 56 as a result of esophageal cancer due to heavy smoking. All told, she appeared in more than a dozen films and several productions, including on Broadway. She was married multiple times but never had kids. Now today, there have been several books and movies made about her. Jessica Lange got an Academy Award nomination because of her, but the books have been called into question. One biography claimed that Frances had received a lobotomy to correct her behavior, but the book's author later claimed he made it up. Even her autobiography wasn't completely believed, because her best friend had finished the final chapter, because Frances passed before she could, resulting in allegations that the friend had completely fabricated. Now, I'm no expert, but it's really easy to lose paper records, especially for high-profile cases. So, were the book's author, her friend, and she lying? Or were they coerced into recanting, so the blame for her insanity could be laid right at Frances's feet? Seems like everybody in her life had a real problem with her unwillingness to be controlled. Since she was likely bipolar, she was crazy, so who cares, right? She was a woman, independent, and that made her problematic. So one has to ponder, how many of you would be committed for unwillingness to conform?